The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and X-Zone TV. Worldwide toll-free 1-800-610-7035. My email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. We're going to be talking to Sir Richard Heygate this hour about the Book of English Magic. Now, Sir Richard inherited his baronetcy and business acumen from his ancestor, Sir William Heygate, who was a well-known Lord Mayor of London and personal banker to the Regency. On his mother's side, he is descended from a long line of Celtic Kings and Queens, and for a time ran the family estate in Ireland. He is the author of Endangered Species, co-authored with his cousin and best friend Michael Daunt. Research for the book introduced him to England's extraordinary history as the center of emerging interest in magic, and the latter-day magicians who brought it to a worldwide both public in Europe and the United States. This experience led him to write The Book of English Magic with Philip Carr-Gomm. He continues to combine writing about unusual subjects with a business career in high technology, the latest example being a global internet venture. Joining me now from the United Kingdom is Sir Richard Heygate. And Sir Richard, welcome to the X-Zone, sir.
Thanks, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here.
Tell me, Sir Richard, what is the purpose of magic?
The purpose of magic is quite simple. I think the best explanation, one of the first things I did in the book is I went to a fair, pagan festival. I have to admit, when I went there, I was a little bit unnerved by the strange clothing, and everyone seemed a bit. Someone described them as they looked more like extras for Mad Max 2, the magicians. but then the person who got up to speak was a lady called Maxine Sanders. Now Maxine goes right back to the real regeneration of magic. She was the wife of Alex Sanders, who founded one of the very large Wiccan cults. Wicca is one of the fastest growing orders in the United States right now.
Yes.
And Maxine was extraordinarily beautiful lady at that time. And anyway, when she got up to speak, the hall sort of fell a bit hush. And then someone dared ask her a question. The question was just the one you posed to me, which said, what is the purpose of magic? And in particular, if you were going to invite someone to join your coven, because Wiccans organized in covens of 13 people, what would you look for? And she said, it's dead simple. She said, a 16-year-old boy came the other day, and he basically gave exactly the right answer to the question. He said, I want power. And magic is for people who want power.
Sir Richard, please stand by, sir. You and I have to take our first 2-minute commercial break. Thank you very much for joining us, Sir Richard. Always a pleasure to talk to people who bring light, enlightenment, and educate people about many of the wonders that we still have in this world today. Sir Richard Heygate is our very special guest this hour, X-Zone Nation. We're talking about Sir Richard's The Book of English Magic, his website, www.bookofelglishmagic.com. And Sir Richard and I will be back on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break, X-Zone Nation, as we continue from our studios in beautiful Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. Don't go away.
And it's magic if the music is groovy and makes you feel happy like an old-time movie. I'll tell you about the magic and it'll free your soul, but it's like trying to tell a stranger about a rock and roll. If you believe in magic, don't bother to choose if it's chant and music or rhythm and blues. Just go and listen. It'll start with a smile that won't wipe off your face no matter how hard you try.
Welcome back, everyone. Sir Richard Heygate is our special guest. We're talking about Sir Richard's new book, The Book of English Magic, which he wrote with Philip Carr-Gomm. His website is www.bookofelglishmagic.com. Tell me, Sir Richard, is magic real or is it just in the imagination of the believers?
Magic is real. I can't believe that millions of people would want to spend time on something that is not real. There was one of the things that introduced, I think, me to magic was a fantastic book, which is called A Dormark Summer by a well-known comedian, not well-known for magic, Michael Benteen, who basically worked with people like Peter Sellers just after the war. And he again experimented with this question. He was a well-known psychic, as was his father. And they spent a long time investigating all sorts of magicians. So, you had people who were psychics, you had people who were ritual magicians, etc., etc., etc. And their conclusion was, roughly, in about 10% of the cases, what they were doing was totally inexplicable and was real. In 90% of the cases, you might have people who are kind of making it up. Of course, in the world of spiritualism, there's a kind of a bad reputation for sort of fraudulent practice, but there's some real spiritualists. So the answer is that real magicians practice real magic. Now, the imagination, as you say, is of course part of it. Are you experiencing these things through the imagination, or are you experiencing things for real? But the fact is, since you cannot sometimes see or feel real magic, you experience real magic through the imagination. So it may be complicated to say it, but actually it's both.
Tell me, Sir Richard, where did modern magic come from?
Modern magic, it's fairly simple, really. Is magic, the strands of magic really go back 2,000 years before. Most of it, in fact, came from the Far East, in especially Egypt, in Israel, Greece. And it would thrive there until it was stamped out firmly by the Emperor Constantine when he adopted Christianity. So there was a huge kind of, this was like a death of magic about 300 AD, which culminated in burning down the great magical library, the great library of Alexandria. So it kind of disappeared underground for a very long time after that. But the good thing about it was all written down. It's like, you can still read Plato 2,400 years later. Well, the writings of magic, which actually how you do it, how you would do ritual magic, they survived in libraries. And the libraries might be in the hands of well-off people, strange people like, Marie Antoinette. France had a fantastic magical library. And that sort of kept magic going too until it re-emerged. The other place it survived was in probably local people who weren't doctors. I think the modern term is hedge witches, people who kept magical practice associated with healing, etc., at a very local level. And those two streams, if you like, the original stream of magic and the old stream of magic, came together and resurfaced again in the last 50 years.
Tell me, Sir Richard, is there a difference between magic and spell casting?
No, spellcasting is simply a form of magic. As I said, when I said magic is power, one of the people who refounded magic, Gerald Gardner, who refounded the other form of Wicca, he came from the Southeast Asia. And there you will find the local magicians, the Bowmores they're called, and they will have outside their kind of surgery, if I can give it a word, they will have various things they will do for you. They will give various spells. They will use various spirits, and what they will be doing is what people want. They want a better job. They want to do better in their business. They want to have a more beautiful wife. They want a male child. The most interesting thing about that is that if it doesn't happen, they can get their money back.
Wow, magic with a guarantee.
Yes. So magic is real, and spellcasting is a form of magic.
So, Richard, why is your book called The Book of English Magic? What other kind of magic sorts are there?
I think we called it The Book of English Magic because it's something that both Philip and I discovered. There's this very strange thing, is that all modern magic has somehow been recreated in England. So if you take the main forms of magic, probably one of the best known is Druidry, which has now actually been officially declared a religion, certainly over here. Of course, the Druids were English. They were very, very powerful magicians. Julius Caesar said the Druids were the most powerful magicians in Europe, and the Romans were so frightened of them that eventually they stamped them out. They murdered a lot of them. So you had that tradition, but then especially over the last 500 years, the revival of modern magic has happened in England. So the other things you have, if you look at the so-called orders like the religions of magic, you will have, for example, the Golden Dawn, which is a society brought together in England about 1890. You'll have a much more infamous guy, which is Aleister Crowley, who people vilify, but was actually a powerful magician. His order, which practices what he basically wrote down, is a corporation in the United States, but it was put together in the UK. And then you have Wicca, the two forms, maybe there's a third form of Wicca, all of which came together in the UK. And most recently you have other forms of magic called chaos magic. So England has been this sort of crucible where the modern magical orders have put the if you like, the tricks of the trade together and made it into something which has grown and is growing at an incredible rate.
Of course, when you think of England and you think of magic, one of the foremost names that comes to one's mind is Merlin.
Yes, well, Merlin, of course, was a Celtic magician, and very powerful. And one of the most interesting things, of course, is to try and figure out what the ancient Druids did, what made them so powerful. If you ever read Robert Graves' book about Claudius the God, there's a wonderful thing where the Roman army has kind of just invaded England. It's marching through the streets, and suddenly this old guy, looking like Merlin, comes out from the side of the road, and he just puts his hand up, and the entire army stops and can't move. And wow. There's a belief that the magic of the ancient Druids rather than modern Druidry was immensely powerful. And one of the things I've tried to do in the book is to find people who are, if you like, the natural descendants of Merlin, who passed his magic down from father to son, father to son, father to son over 2,000 years. And I found one of those.
What was it like speaking to an actual descendant of Merlin?
What I did is I spoke to his disciple. Unfortunately, the actual descendant by that time is dead. The disciple, if you like, has become his one of my best friends, and he was taught rather like a kind of a sort of young, real Harry Potter. as a teenager by this old hill farmer who lived in Wales, who literally had the magic of Merlin in his heart. He could practice it, and it's extraordinary to understand the sort of things he believed in, and they understand the things that he did. And to my mind, it was, if you like, it was more real, if I have a preference in magic, than the imported version. So my own personal preferences, I think that original magic of England is extraordinary.
Speaking about Harry Potter, Sir Richard, what has Harry Potter done for magic?
I think what you've seen, of course, is you've seen the fictional magic. It's not just Harry Potter. It started with Tolkien, you know?
Yes.
And what Tolkien was doing was, of course, of talking the magic of the Anglo-Saxons. You know, the Middle Earth he talks about. The Middle Earth is basically one of the places that shamans, which of course you get shamanic shamanic teachers in the United States a lot.
Yes.
There's shamans in the native Indian population, and the Anglo-Saxons were shamans, and Middle Earth is where the shamans travel to in their spirit journeying. So it started with the if you like, the imagination of people of the kind of the Middle Earth world, and then we have Harry Potter, we have Philip Pullman, of course, and all those people, the things that they have done, it's all based on actual magic. So when in Harry Potter, you've got wizards and you've got spells, all those things. I mean, J.K. Rowling understands what magic is about. So even though you think this is all fiction, in fact, it's all based on the same sort of fact that you practice in magic. And what is happening, especially, I think, to the young kids right now, is they want to try it themselves. And this has been supercharged by a lady from America called, of course, Stephanie Meyer, who has attracted a massive audience of teenagers. I think 50 million people have read her books. And it's like a jump on from Harry Potter, because the people who read Stephanie Meyer want a bit more reality. And in Stephanie Meyer, it's having a vampire as a boyfriend.
Here in America, I don't know what it's like over in the UK, but the television shows about vampires and werewolves are pulling in the highest ratings that networks have seen in a long time. And I was wondering, Sir Richard, if you might have an idea on why people are still so interested in not only magic, but in vampires and werewolves.
It's kind of all part of the same thing. That people are. People are attracted by this other world, and why are they attracted by it? Well, okay, power is something, but the fact is, it's interesting and it's fun. There's one of the very serious professors we interview in the book, very interesting guy. He's a very serious professor of history, and when I interviewed him, he said, "Well, I'm not a real magician myself, but I go a lot to magical events. I go to rituals, etc." And I say, "Why?" He says, "Well, because it's more fun than going to church." The truth is, magic is fun. And there was a program in the UK, I'm not sure it came across to you, which was Around the World in 80 Face. And it talked about various parts of the world where, Christianity and magic exist side by side. And I don't see why they shouldn't. I think they both have a great role to play. But when the program interviewed the younger people and they said, what did they like? They said they liked magic, because it had a greater sense of reality. They could kind of do what they wanted, and it was fun. I think one of the analogies I have of why they coexist is if you think that religion is more like buying your spirituality from a big store. You get looked after, you get told what to do. You can't get poisoned or make a mistake because
That's
it's
right.
very well controlled. Magic is like buying the same thing off the internet. You don't know where to go to. It's full of exciting experiences. The two coexist together, but who uses the internet? The kids.
Sir Richard, please stand by. Exonation Sir Richard Heygate is our special guest. We're talking about a book that he co-wrote with Philip Carr-Gomm entitled The Book of English Magic. His website is www.bookofenglishmagic.com, and Sir Richard and I will be back after this news break as the X Zone continues right here from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network. X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, and Star Cable. Our toll-free telephone number worldwide is 1-800-610-7035. Our email address, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com, and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Talking about magic this hour in the X-Zone with our very special guest, Sir Richard Heygate. He is the co-author of The Book of English Magic, and their website is www.bookofenglishmagic.com. Tell me, Sir Richard, how did you write a book about such a secretive subject? How did you get your research done?
It was very difficult, really, because I mean the history, of course, is pretty freely available nowadays. Even the most in the most secret text, because when magic was started again about 100 years ago, people kept the text secret. Now you can download them off the internet, so that's all available. The difficult thing, of course, is talking to magicians, because people that slender percentage of people who can really do magic. To keep to themselves. And dare I say, magicians tend to talk to other magicians, because if they don't, they simply get asked the same damn fool questions. Does magic work?
Sure.
What can you do? Show me something. All this stuff, right? and therefore they tend to. And the most important thing for us to do was to find who these people were. And what I did was to find one or two, and then people then began to trust me, because that anything that I was going to write down, they said. Obviously, I was going to feed it back to them. They could have editorial control over it, and I also had to be sympathetic to what they did. So an awful lot of what I did was to if you like, to find people who I believed were credible, and then make myself acceptable to them, understand what they did, and understand why they did it. So I could ask them sensible questions. The sensible questions were all around, what is your form of magic? What do you do? What effect does it have? And ask them not from a sort of, disbelieving, poking fun point of view, but from a serious point of view, because a lot of the magicians have spent sometimes 10, 20 or 30 years learning their craft. Magic is often called a craft. So you've got to take them seriously. And finding our 50 magicians, and you will find them all interviewed in the book, was a tough thing to do, but it was a wonderful experience.
So, Richard, have you witnessed magic?
Yes.
Could you share some of the magic that you've witnessed, sir?
I can share a bit. I mean, we consciously said we weren't going to put our own personal experiences in the book, because if you did that, then everyone says, well, you're a loony because you don't believe in this stuff. And therefore what we did is we concentrated on three things. One is the real history of magic. Two is the reports, as I said, with the adepts. And thirdly, some suggestions about how people got started. On the other hand, yes, certain things happened. I think one of the strangest ones that really happened to me in the book is I was researching a couple of things. One is the sort of the energy of England. England, there's a lot of studies of Earth energy, ley lines of energy which crisscross England, and the interesting thing about these is you can dowse for them. Okay, there's instructions in the book about how to learn to dowse, and I learned to dowse myself. one of the first things that fascinated me is that I and another dowser could basically understand where these invisible lines of energies were, and you could start us without talking to each other, and we kind of came to them in the same spot. So that was a bit of magic. And then the second thing you found is where the lines of energy cross, you tend to find churches. The most famous line of energy, called the St. Michael line in the UK, is covered with churches called St. Michael. And the cross is actually right in the church in front of the altar. So it begins to be a belief that this is not just a cross. This is what Philip Pullman calls this is a crack between the worlds, right? This is where you can communicate from one world to the next, and this shows you the exact spot. And I was really interested in finding out, therefore, what the Anglo-Saxons did, because they were shamans, and this is what a shaman does. Of course, a shaman communicates with spirits in the other world. So, and there's the knowledge that many of the Anglo-Saxon sacred places then became the sites for latter-day Christianity. So we were trying to find a shamanistic spot, a shamanistic altar in England, and so there wasn't one anywhere in books or anywhere in Google. So we dowsed for it. Okay. And it took us. It says there is a shamanistic altar in this little tiny village. Well, we didn't believe it, but we ended up talking to the most famous experts, like the modern Tolkien, who lived quite close to it one day. We went and had lunch with him, and we just said, look, we think there's a shamanistic Saxon altar in this bit. He said, how did you know? How did you possibly know? Because no one knows that but me. So we went there, and sure enough, we found an incredible stone which was carved with runes. And I wasn't quite sure what to make of it until I talked a bit later to one of the most famous dowsers in England. And again, he said the same thing. He said, how did you find this? I think no one in England knows what it is apart from me. And he showed us the runes, and I said, what is it? Oh, he said, it's quite simple. It's a flying stone. It's a stone which a shaman could hold and would then help him to travel to the spirit world. So by a little bit of magic, which is totally inexplicable to me, we succeeded in finding a genuine shamanic Anglo-Saxon altar, which probably hadn't been used for 1,500 years.
It seems that there is undoubtedly a connection between the church and magic. So why is there that resistance from the church to accept magic as part of its doctrine?
I'm not into. You have to sort of go back into history. I'm not sure. I love churches, and I love the church. I was brought up, obviously going to church, and I'm not sure that there is that hostility. Is if you go back into history, there was a hostility in about the 3rd or 4th century when the church was trying to figure out what was the one true gospel. There was all sorts of gospels coming from various places. They had to figure out what was the right one, and what they were just as tough on pagans as they were on heretics. And for a long time, even almost 1,000 years after that, if you look at where the church, if you like, really put its antis, it was against heretics, not magicians. And the great example is in the 12th century, where the first crusade in Europe wiped out nearly 1 million heretics in southwest France. And these heretics, they weren't the magicians, they were Christians. They just thought about it a different way. And where did the church again, if you like, have a go at the pagans? Probably in the 17th century when you had all the witchcraft stuff. And what was that? What was the witchcraft stuff about? Again, it was the modern non-Catholic church which was having, again, I think trying to form up what it was doing. And it really decided that witchcraft was something it was going to have a go at. But I find it existing in a very compatible way. As I said, I think one of my greatest friends is a very well-known Catholic priest. He's an extraordinary person, this. He can, dare I say it, he can perform miracles. He can perform miracles of healing. And he was a christening the other day I was at, and he was basically using, the water and the oil, and he paused halfway through. He said, I'm doing this to drive out evil spirits. And he said, I know you don't believe in evil spirits, but they exist. And at the end I went up and I said, you're not a priest, you're a magician. He said, that's the same thing.
What are some of the risks involved with performing magic, if any?
Yes, there are two very bad risks. The first risk is the risk having someone who is using magic to gain power over people. And of course, we're now talking about the world of cults, the world of gurus, the world of people who use magic to gain control of the minds and the wallets and all sorts of other things of people who are gullible, and often people who are defenseless. And it happens everywhere. As you know, it happens in the United States. I'm sure you can think of a few good examples.
Oh, definitely.
It's in India. And so the first risk is, if you are going to join a magical order, be very careful who is running it. And figure out what they're doing it for, because if they're doing it to gain power over their group, run. So it's in a sense, that's why the church is so good, because someone's not going to do the same thing to you. So for a lot of people, stay with the church, because if you're going to go out to a magician and say it is like buying something from the internet, you don't know who you're dealing with. And so you could deal with not just a fraud, but someone who could ruin your life. Okay. Now, the second thing is quite different, which is the fact is that there are not only unpleasant people on this side, there are unpleasant people on the other side. Don't forget, magic is about dealing with the spirit world, right?
Right.
And there's a wonderful story in one of my favorite books about a guy who runs a pub in England. Okay, and his problem is he can't get too many customers, so he discovers that he has a trick which he can predict the results of horse races. Yeah? So he does this, and he gives his customers the winners, and they all pile into the pub. So one day he tries to ask where the thing is coming from. So he gets out one of these home kits for talking to the spirit world, glasses, glass turning, planchette.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And the answer says, old friend. Okay, and he thinks, oh, well, old friend, that sounds good. But this old friend is not a friend. This is an incredibly unpleasant spirit who begins to take the guy over. And eventually he's so frightened, he asked some magician friends to perform an exorcism. And it's horrific. It's far worse than The Exorcist. Things get thrown around, evil smells, this ghastly thing materializes. Really horrific experience. But eventually they get rid of old friend. The problem is for the publican is, of course, he can't predict the racing results any longer. So the inevitable happen. He calls back old friend. He ends up in a padded cell. That's not my story. That's a story, again, from my friend, the very well-known comedian. So, yes, there are nasty things out there. The church is right. There are demons. There are unpleasantnesses. And the first thing you get taught as a magician is how to get rid of them.
How does a magician get rid of evil spirits?
Well, I said you can even download a method from the internet. The first thing you get taught in ritual magic is banishing, okay? Which is how to get rid of things. What are the spells, the rituals to get rid of evil spirits? That's one way. There's another way, which is weird. It's like what I call the playground bully syndrome. If you get bullied by someone, you tend to find a friend who's bigger and tougher than the bully.
Yes.
And there's a wonderful shaman in England who learned his shamanic treatment all over the world, including in Brazil and Haiti and Miami. And he had these problems, and so he basically figured out that he had to have an ally who was powerful. And he chose a spirit who was very like Kali. Kali is the Indian goddess of destruction, a very, very powerful woman. And from that moment on, when he had an ally who was tougher and more unpleasant than anything attacking him, he was okay. Sounds weird. Playground bully syndrome.
Sir Richard, has magic been outdated by science?
I don't think so. I find it quite the opposite. I find it kind of difficult. When I was at school and I learned atomic physics, you learned about these round things which kind of circle in the air around other round things, and now every time I read particle physics, it's different. They keep on reinventing it the whole time. And do they really know what even the most basic question is? What matter is? I mean, you probably read that we had one of the biggest nuclear accelerators in the world built in Switzerland recently, and the question was, when they turn it on, will we all disappear into a black hole? So, do scientists really know what they're doing? On one aspect, I could say that your belief in magic starts when you encounter something totally inexplicable by science. So, for example, that simple thing that I had when I discovered something which was not in any book, and I couldn't find my way to it, and I found it by a magical trick called dowsing. Well, science cannot work out how dowsing works, yet it does. So until the two things come together, that science can explain the things in magic, then that they will be apart. But I think they will come together. My belief is that the two will come together eventually.
Sir Richard, please stand by. You and I have to take our final break. X-Zone Nation, our special guest this hour is Sir Richard Heygate. We're talking about Sir Richard's newest book entitled The Book of English Magic. Now, if you'd like to find out more about Sir Richard, or if you'd like to get a copy of his book, you can go to www.bookofelglishmagic.com. That's www.bookofelglishmagic.com. Or you can go to overlookpress.com. That's www.overlookpress.com. And don't forget, the name of Sir Richard's book is Book of English Magic. 1-800-610-7035 worldwide toll free. My email address is xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. The X-Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable, and X-Zone TV. Sir Richard and I return on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Never been away, hey. Never seen a day break. Leaning on my pillow in the morning. Lazy day in bed. Music in my head. Crazy music playing in the morning light.
Sir Richard Heygate's our special guest. He is the author of The Book of English Magic, www.bookofelglishmagic.com. Sir Richard, can anyone practice magic, or does it take special talents, special skills?
It certainly helps if you have some degree of a psychic skill, which is a skill which you can learn, but also in many cases people inherit it.
Mm-hmm.
So that certainly helps, but anyone can practice it. You just learn faster if you're psychic.
Let me ask you a futuristic question. Where do you think the world of magic will be in another 100 years from now?
I suspect that magic will be acceptable just as another part of life, and in that one of the things that I think especially the young find right now is life is boring. And talking to some of my son's friends the other day, they were just saying, we don't like our work. We don't like what we do. Life is too dull. The fact about magic is it will attract people, and it will continue to grow at an incredibly rapid rate because it is exciting to do. It's exciting to do. It is powerful. It also makes you question science, and it's fun. And I believe that all that will make magic, if you like, to be practiced quite normally. I mean, for example, you can actually learn magic. You can learn shamanism in universities in this country. I'm not sure it happens in the States, and I think you're going to find that everywhere. So I think that the last I suppose 30 years, especially since the 60s and the 70s, it's come out of the cupboard. In 100 years' time, it'll be absolutely normal for people to learn magic and to practice magic. That's my prediction.
Sir Richard, what would you like to leave the members of the X-Zone Nation with tonight, sir?
What I would like to leave them with is stop demonizing it. Stop saying magic is only for loonies and it's somehow bad and evil. It is simply another way of experiencing life. And what I would like to leave people is learn about it, try it seriously, find other good and interesting people to practice it with who you trust, and just experiment. And if something happens to you which you can't explain, you're hooked.
Sir Richard, I want to thank you ever so much for joining us. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. Thank you for sharing the information that you have tonight with us on magic, and I wish you all the world of success with your new book, The English Book of Magic.
Thanks, Rob.
Take care, sir. Sir Richard Heygate has been my guest this hour, Exonation. He is the author, along with Philip Carr-Gomm, of the new book, The Book of English Magic. It's available at www.bookoфenglishmagic.com. That's www.bookoфenglishmagic.com. Or you can also go to overlookpress.com. That's www.overlookpress.com. Exonation, we're going to be back on the other side of this break. More from the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. Whether you're a believer or you're a skeptic, you're here with me, Rob McConnell, in the X Zone. You know, after doing this show now for nearly 20 years, I'm going to tell you something. I've heard some incredible stories, talked to some of the greatest people that anyone could ever hope to talk to. And magic lives. Magic is in the heart of one and all. And if you think I'm kidding, just remember Christmas morning, the magic, the wonderment, and the feeling you get inside, or when you see your baby smile. Magic is all around us. We just have to look. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news. Don't go away.